Once you've added names to your data, you'll want to go back to those names from time to time to make changes or find information. You will find your name records in Name List Management, and that's the topic of this session. To find your names, you'll go to the Donors tab and then Name List Management. Here we see a list of some of our names. If you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see that it says we are on page 1 of 20. And if you count the number of records on the page, we see that there are 10 names per page. So Denari is giving us just 200 of our total names to scroll through by using the scroll buttons here on the left. So why do we only get 200 names? The first reason is that you're working on the web. When you click the Name List Management link, as we just did a few seconds ago, your browser has to download all of the data to your computer. If you have 20,000 names, that will take a long time. So to make things more efficient and usable for everyone, Denari limits you to 200 at a time. The second reason is that no one wants to scroll through 20,000 name records to find the one that you want. So Denari has given us the 4 search fields here at the top. The idea is that you can use those fields to narrow the list of names down to less than 200, so that if necessary we can scroll through to find the ones we want, and hopefully we won't have to scroll at all. The 4 default fields are, as you see here, last name, first name, organization, and account number. But we can change those by clicking the drop down to select something else, and any of these fields here are available for us to search through. And we can combine the search fields to narrow the list even further. Let's look at an example. If we know the person's last name is Doe, we can enter that into the last name field. Now when I click search or hit the enter key on my keyboard, I get all the names in the data that have a last name that begins with DOE. By the way, Denari now is searching all of our names and not just the 200. But what if that search produces more than 200 pages? We need to narrow that down even further. I'm going to hit my scroll button here to scroll back to the previous page. Now let's say that I know the first name of this person as well as the last name, so I enter that first name field. I'm going to use Mary. And again, when I click search, I get everybody in our data whose last name begins with DOE and whose first name begins with Mary. What if I only know that the person's name begins with DO? I can put that into the last name field. When I search, I get everyone whose last name begins with DO and whose first name begins with Mary. And of course I can do the same thing for any of the other 2 fields and any fields in the drop-down list. What if I only know that the person's name has DO somewhere in the last name field? Now I can enter a % in front of that DO, and when I do that search, I get a list of names of everybody that has DO somewhere in the last name field and whose first name begins with Mary. This search function works the same way for all of the records throughout Denari, whether it be appeal codes or fund codes or classifications, etc. So now let's take a look at the name record page, and we'll select the Mary Doe record. This page is the cover page, if you will, for all of the information we store for this name record. As we quickly look through the page, we see that it stores the basic info like names and address, etc. But we also store a lot of other information as well. At the top of the page, we find the Other Pages drop-down field. Here we see that there are other pages of information related to this donor, like alternate address, classifications, contacts, gift history, pledges, etc. These are topics that are covered in other videos. In this session, we're going to look at the main name page. Many of the fields on this page are pretty intuitive, so we will focus only on those fields that need some explanation. And the first field is the account number. It's assigned by Denari. As each name record is added, Denari chooses the next number incrementally. If name records are deleted, Denari does not reuse the account number. This is the number that you will use as the identifier for a name record. It is unique, so there can only be one donor with this number. Many of the fields on this top section are self-explanatory, but there are a few that we need to talk about. The first here is organization. Denari does not use this field to determine if a name record is an organization or not, but it does use the field when printing names and addresses on statements like receipts, pledge statements, etc., as well as on some reports. Let's call that section of the statement the address block. It contains the name and address info. Denari has functionality built into that address block that is designed to make the block look more attractive and readable. The address block function also uses another field from this top section called contact name. Denari does not use the first and last name fields in this address block. The contact name field allows you to enter the name and address the way you prefer it to be seen in the address block on statements. For example, by default, when you create a new name, Denari will fill in the contact name field automatically for you using the first, spouse, and last name fields as you've entered them when clicking Add New to create the new name record. It might say something like John and Jane Doe. Some of our clients, however, believe that this is too informal and prefer that it say Mr. and Mrs. Doe. You can put that into the contact name field, and that's what Denari will use in the address block. How does the address block functionality work? If the organization field is blank, Denari will put the contact name field in the first row of the address block. The street address will go into the second row, and the city, state, and zip into the third row. And then finally the country, if there is one, will go into the fourth row. And if we have something in the second street option, that will move everything down as well. If there is something in the organization field, Denari will put the organization field in that first row, the contact name in the second row, the address in the third row, the city, state, and zip in the fourth row, etc. In other words, it moves everything down a row. This can create a small problem, however. If you put the name of an organization in the organization field and also again in the contact name field, it will appear twice in the address block. So you should decide early on how you will handle this for your organization. If you decide to store the name of the organization in the organization field, then you should leave the contact name field blank unless there's a person who is the contact for that organization that can go into that field. There's one small issue with this method, and that is when you create a new name record and you leave the first and last name fields blank, Denari will not fill in the salutation field automatically. You'll need to manually do that once the record is set up. And that brings us to the DEAR or salutation field. Denari will print the contents of this field on statements that contain letters. Just like the contact name field, Denari will fill in this field automatically when you create a new name record using the first, spouse, and last name fields that you enter in the new Add New form. Again, you can change this field to make it more formal or use whatever name format you would prefer. And as mentioned previously, if you leave these fields blank when adding new name record, Denari will leave the DEAR field blank as well, and then you'll need to manually type something into that field. There are two code fields in this top section, name code and then down here name type. Both of these are covered in the session on code, so we won't repeat that here, but it is worth noting that the name type field is required as indicated by the little red star to the left. By default, the name type field is not filled in automatically when creating a new name record, although you can set a preference under the Admin tab, Company Preferences for that field. But if you don't select a preference, you'll have to come to this field when setting up a new name record and select something there. There's another set of fields in the top section called Family, Position, and Use Family Address, the checkbox here. We will cover this topic in another training session. However, let me briefly summarize it by saying that it is a feature that allows you to group several name records together, which then allows you to combine those name records into one mailing record. For example, if you have a husband and wife as one name record and they have two children as two separate name records, all living in the same household, you can maintain those separate records with 3 separate gift histories but combine them into one when doing a mailing. Let's now move to the address section, and I'll scroll down here so you can see that. And first, let's talk about the country field. Most Denari users receive donations from a limited number of countries. Therefore, Denari does not offer you every country in the world in this drop-down field. Instead, it allows you to create your own unique country list. Let's take a look at how we do that. We'll click on the Donors tab and then Countries, and then Add New to create a new one. This one is pretty simple. We just type in the description and the abbreviation and click Save, and now we've added that country to our list. We also have a deliverable checkbox here in this section, and this is used for those times when you send out mail and it comes back from the post office as undeliverable. You can then uncheck that box. Now when you do mailings, you can tell Denari to not include those. In Name Segmenter, Denari calls them bad addresses, and you'll see that in the session on Name Segmenter. Across from the deliverable checkbox, we find the International field. Denari does not use the country field to determine if this address is an international address or not. Instead, it relies on this field. The reason for this is that Denari has clients in other countries, and of course their definition of international is different from those living in the US. This field allows you to confine your mailings to just international, not international, or everyone. Below the international row there, we have NCOA fields. NCOA stands for National Change of Address and is something that the U.S. Post Office uses. When one of your donors moves, they can fill out an NCOA form, which allows the post office to forward their mail to the new address. The post office makes this information available to businesses and others to update their records as well. The NCOA feature is an add-on feature to Denari. If you're interested, you can contact our admin office for more information. Synergy runs this service 4 times per year, and you can subscribe as needed. Checking the No NCOA checkbox will remove this name record from the process. In other words, it won't be included and won't be updated. At the bottom of this section, we have the Standardize link. Standardization is also a post office option and is an add-on feature for Denari. When you add a new name record, Denari will attempt to standardize the address according to the post office database. But you may have an occasion to need to standardize this particular name record, and you can do that by clicking this link. When you standardize, Denari will match the post office standard, which puts the street and city fields in all uppercase. While your data will be stored that way, you can change how this prints on statements and reports under the Admin tab and then Company Preferences. The Map link will connect you to MapQuest and place this address on the map. The Copy link will place the name and address on the Windows clipboard, which then allows you to paste that into a different document. For example, if you're writing a single letter in Microsoft Word to this individual, you can copy and paste to that document. The Phone Lookup link will connect you to the white pages and will attempt to find a phone number for this name record if it's available. Let's stop there, and we'll pick this up in session 2.